For this section, I'm going to be going over the distributive property and how to simplify square roots. For the distributive property, this is when you have a quantity on the outside of terms that are inside of some type of grouping symbol, usually parentheses, but you could also see brackets. What you do is you take the outside term and you multiply it times the terms on the inside. So a lot of times you'll see people drawing arrows to make sure that they don't miss or forget any terms. So 5 times 7 is going to be 35. And 5 times this x with the minus sign is going to be minus 5x. Going on to the second one, we have negative 7, and we're going to take that times 5m and times negative 4. So negative 7 times 5m is going to be negative 35m, and negative 7 times negative 4 is going to be positive 28. Now you may have a case where you need to distribute first and then combine with the like terms that they have at the end of the problem. So I'm going to start by taking negative 4 times both of these terms. So I have negative 8n minus 24 minus 9n. So what I can combine is the negative 8n and the negative 9n, and that's going to leave me with negative 17n minus 24. For the fourth one, I'm going to take negative 2 times 3v and negative 2 times 2. So that's going to be negative 6v minus 4 plus 8. The like terms for this one are the negative 4 and the 8. So I'm going to be left with negative 6v plus 4. For number 5, you just have a negative sign sitting out front. Technically, this has a 1 sitting in front of that parenthesis. So really you're taking negative 1 times x times that 21 over 4. So it's just going to change the signs of both of these. So it says negative x minus 21 over 4. When it comes to simplifying square roots, we should consider the list of perfect squares. So this is a decent list that's going to get you started when you're trying to simplify something. If you already have one of these numbers underneath the square root sign, those are the easy ones to do because they're going to get you a nice whole number. Like number 1, the square root of 9 is going to be equal to 3. But not all numbers are perfect squares. So when they don't fall directly on one of these numbers here, we need to try to simplify the best we can by using these numbers from this list to help us with that. So for number 2, I have the square root of 27, which sits right between 25 and 36 on my list. So it's not a perfect square. So what I need to do is think from my list up here, what number goes into 27? 4 doesn't work, 9 does, 16 won't work, 25 won't work, and 36 is too big. So 9 is going to be the biggest perfect square that can go into 27. So if I think about this, that would be rewritten as 9 times 3. So after I have it separated like that, I can then take the square root of 9 times the square root of 3. The square root of 9 we said earlier was 3, so that simplifies and you get rid of the square root sign. And then the square root of 3, we're not going to be able to do anything with that because the smallest perfect square on our list was 4, and that's already too big. So we just put it underneath the radical sign and we attach. Let's look at another one. The square root of 54. Again, that's not on the list up above, so we want to try to find the biggest perfect square that would go into 54. So again, I would start testing your numbers from your list if you're not sure which one works. But 54 could be rewritten as 9 times 6. So again, I can split this apart to the square root of 9 times the square root of 6. And the square root of 9 is going to be 3. And then the square root of 6 will stay underneath the radical sign. For number 4, the square root of 80. Again, 4 will work for the square root of 80, but you're going to want to pick the biggest perfect square, and there is actually a bigger one in our list. If we keep going, 16 actually goes in the 80. If you do 16 times 5, So then if we split this one apart, 16 times 5, both of those underneath the radical sign, the square root of 16 is going to be 4, and then that square root of 5 is going to stay underneath. Now if you have a term that's sitting outside of the square root sign, like number 5 and number 6, we've got these numbers sitting out front. What happens here is you square root whatever you can, and you're going to have to multiply that by what's sitting in the front. So the square root of 16 is going to be 4, so we're going to have to take 7 times 4 for number 5, which is going to be 28. For number 6, we have negative 7. 49 times 3 is how we can rewrite that 147. And so the square root of 49 is going to be 7. And then that radical 3 has to stay. So this final answer is going to be negative 49 times the square root of 3. If you have problems where you're trying to multiply square roots or things underneath the radical, anything outside of the radical can be combined and anything underneath the radicals can be combined. So for this one, 4 needs to stay out front and 5 times 2 is 10. So that's going to go underneath the square root sign. For number 8, when I multiply, I have a negative sitting out front, and underneath I have 48. I then will have to go through my list, find the biggest perfect square, which is 16, 16 times 3, and simplify this one like we did before. So my final answer is going to be negative 4, because that negative sign, times the square root of 3.